Finding Good Franchises. This is really, it's a show that's dedicated to helping franchise buyers find clear and truthful information regarding franchise ownership. So I am your host, Sabrina Wall, and I just want to kind of start us off with a reflection. Buying a franchise is one of the most liberating experiences of a professional's life. And it's really that moment when someone who's already driven, who already really wants to do well, they kind of shake off the chains of unemployment and they move into a place where they're controlling their own life. They're controlling their own destiny. They're calling the shots. They are creating the environment that they want to work in, and they're working with the customers that they want to work with. And all of that, it kind of leads to this different experience of respect. And I think that's something a lot of people will miss as they're looking for a franchise or looking for a business. They don't think about that. But I think it's a really important one because it teaches you how to not only gain the respect of others, but also to really have respect for yourself. And it's just a situation where you're choosing how you want to be treated and standing up for yourself and what fair treatment of you is and what it looks like. Instead of dealing with people that you really aren't aligned with in the workplace or with other companies, you get to say no to them. And, I'll share a story with you. I know someone who was trying to get a deal at this restaurant. And he was really, really trying to get a deal. He kept complaining and complaining, and he wanted a lower price for what they were doing. So he was trying to get this deal, and instead of getting the deal, they ended up giving him the boot. They told him that he had to leave. And so that's kind of the experience. You get to decide who you want to deal with, and you don't have to deal with nasty people. You get to honor yourself and honor them as well. And so, it's that kind of freedom and authority and respect for yourself, which really comes as a byproduct of owning your own business. You get to be your own boss, and that's a really awesome experience. But it's also hard. It is not the easy route at all by any means. And from our experience, starting a business from scratch, it's incredibly difficult. And there's just simply so much work and so many pieces to make that work that it can be exhausting and it can just be really, really difficult. And sometimes people get to the point where when they've started a business from scratch, they feel like this isn't even worth my time. And so that story and scenario is kind of the reason why franchising truly can be so powerful. It's because it allows people who really haven't had no business experience in the past to find something where they thrive as a business owner. And it allows them to really take control of their life and their situation, but in a way where they have this full support of this big partner and team behind them. This partner that has teams and teams of people who are ready and willing and there and able to really come alongside you as the owner and help you to grow your business because they have a vested interest in doing so. They're really partnering with you. And the design of a good franchise is really to take that load off of the business owner's shoulders and to really help make the totality of the work just a lot more manageable, a lot more realistic, because none of us want to be a slave to our work. We don't want to work endless hours. And with franchising, you don't have to be. It's hard in the beginning, and then it gets easier and easier and easier. And you really do have the opportunity with franchising to have the best of both worlds. You get to build something with a team. You get to have the support just like you would have if you were working as an employee. but it's support that not only can you count on as a business owner, but your employees can count on and rely on. And because there's this shared resource and shared, team, it just allows you to create a truly quality life experience as a successful business owner when it's done correctly. And so that's what we're here to talk about. We want to get to that outcome where it looks like the picture of freedom and respect and wealth creation and a feeling of, yes, I'm doing this and I've done it well and I'm excited about the future. Like, that's what we want for you, instead of the alternative, which is where you bought something that maybe you didn't fully understand before you bought it, and you don't like it and you want out, and you've lost a lot in the process. So you can have either way, and we just want to help you to find the better way so that you can avoid that loss, which happens as an option as well. So I know I've kind of already introduced myself as Sabrina, but to give you a little bit more background about why this is our mission and why we're so interested in this and so committed to this. I'm the CEO of the Franchise Brokers Association, and I'm also a national trainer. So I do trainings and I teach people about what to look for in franchises, and I teach brokers about how to read FDDs and what the real life of living in franchising is like. And the reason that I know that is because I myself have personally owned, as well as I've operated 27 franchise locations for myself and for investors that we were working for. And we did that with 4 different franchise systems. And so that really gave me just incredible insight about how franchising really works. And I've had some just remarkable success stories where the franchise was on autopilot so much that it allowed me to create other businesses and grow wealth in other ways. And so it's been like such an amazing and incredible experience with certain franchise systems. And with others, it's been a complete and total nightmare. And so we want to bring this knowledge of what can happen and how to avoid it to you so that you can be best prepared. And so we have with us today Eric Reese. So Eric is a partner at Lathrop & Gage, which is one of the largest law firms in the country that specializes in franchising. They have over 500 attorneys, and they have offices all over the nation. They are, very, very big advocates of franchising, and they support the International Franchise Association. They represent hundreds of franchises. And Eric specifically, he's a trainer in franchising, a national trainer. He was awarded 2021's Best Lawyers in America award. He's a CPA and a business advisor. And then he's also an independent business owner as well. So he's really lived it, and he's helped a lot of people through many difficult situations in franchising and business law. So he comes to us with just a true wealth of knowledge. We also have with us Amanda Ramirez. So Amanda is a national franchise trainer, and she's an award-winning franchise broker. She, as a trainer, she really focuses on helping franchise brokers understand how to educate their candidates and franchise buyers through the award process. And so she focuses a lot of that time and attention on making sure that people are educated along the way and that they understand what they're purchasing. She's also worked with an international program and in the immigration space. So she's been doing things like assisting immigrants with everything from selecting a franchise to getting their visa to building out locations of that franchise across the country, and then by managing those franchise locations as well. So with that, I'd like to welcome Eric and Amanda to the show.
Hello.
Hi, so nice to see you. So let's start off with you, Eric. One of the title of this show is Researching Franchises Doesn't Have to Be Tricky. So how have you seen people research franchises generally? How are they investigating these various franchise offerings?
Sure. And what we'll talk about today is first the common mistakes, and then we'll also give you a methodology. We'll tell you how you do it, right? How you can assure yourself that you'll be successful in franchising. And that sounds like a pitch for franchising, and it's really not. I'm not so much a fan of franchising as I am independent business ownership. The only way that you can set your own course, set your own destiny, and create a legacy is independent business ownership. What franchising does, why I'm a fan of it is a system. I call it, they made the mistake so you don't have to. What we're looking for is a proven system that we can plug and play into. And so long as we do these steps that we're going to talk about, that Amanda and I and Sabrina are going to talk about today, so long as we do the due diligence that we're going to talk about, and we'll tell you how to do that as well, you are most assuredly guaranteed a successful venture so long as you follow the system. But let's talk about the mistakes. I think that some of the mistakes that people make is they listen to the wrong people out there. There's a lot of misinformation about franchising. I've heard people say, don't buy what you like. Don't buy a franchise because you like the product or service. And if you think about that, that's really silly. Of course you have to like what you do for a living. Of course you have to believe in the value proposition. The correct terminology is don't buy it just because you like it. Don't buy it because it's a neat brand or you really think it's a cool workout facility or what have you. Follow the steps and don't be confused. I think that a lot of people get the FDD, a franchise disclosure document, which is a document required by the government. They get this 300-page, and yes, it's 300 pages long, many of them are, document, and all of a sudden, it feels much more confusing than it really is. We have to remember as prospective franchisees that FDD exists because the government is trying to protect you. But we'll talk about how to break down the FDD in a very logical and easy way to answer the questions that you need answered to make sure that it's going to be a successful franchise venture. The FDD, as we'll talk about just a little bit later, is a monster document, but there are very few items that we'll talk about in the document that are critically important that will be able to answer the three questions that every prospective franchisee like yourselves need to answer. Number one, how much is it going to cost me? Number two, how much money am I going to make? And number three, does the franchisor have a proven system that others have followed so that I know all I have to do is follow it and I will achieve the answers that I've already obtained from those questions. A, how much does it cost? B, how much am I going to make? And C, is the system something that I can follow? And guys, this isn't unique to franchising. If you're going to invest in anything, you better be asking, how much does it cost me? And how much am I going to make? And Sabrina, we'll talk in just a little bit. We'll talk about specifically how you get those answers from the FDD and the proper due diligence that you're going to do.
Thank you, Eric. I feel like that is commonly something that people say is that you don't buy it on the product, but I think you're right that it needs to be the product and the system behind it, because people don't always understand the role of the owner. They don't understand what they're actually going to be required to do as an owner in a franchise. So Really good feedback and insight there. So Amanda, Eric was talking about the FDD, and that being one piece of the story and being able to follow that. Why do you think most people don't really get the full story in the franchise award process when they do it on their own? Like, why is that?
Well, thank you all for joining today. I'm really happy to be here. And really, to answer your question, Sabrina, there are two main reasons. So number one, because they simply don't have access to the proper tools and the resources to be able to evaluate a system. So to be very simple, and I'm going to go into it a little bit more, but and the second main reason is they're really not able to identify right away if that franchise is even a good match. So to Eric's point, you have to like the product, but you also have to make sure that you can do these things on a daily basis. So just because you hear somebody say that it's the hottest franchise out there, that doesn't mean that it's the right one for you, for your family, for the goals that you're trying to achieve. So you start going through the process with the franchise system without knowing what that franchise can do for you. So now you're researching that franchise for 3 months, and you get to the end of the 3 months and you realize, why did I even look at this brand? So we call that research fatigue, right? Where you looked at one brand for 3 months and you didn't accomplish anything because you should have been looking at the right one from the very beginning. This is a significant investment for most people. It doesn't matter if it's $50,000 or $1 million, right? So, but even aside from the investment, there is a time commitment that is required from you, from the franchise broker, and on the franchisor side. So you want to be able to find what those brands are right from the beginning, know what the steps are to be able to really evaluate that brand effectively, be able to compare the options. So all of those things are, I would say, almost impossible without working with a franchise broker.
Yeah, they definitely have more tools and resources. But it's really like anything, you don't know what you don't know until you're in it and living it, and the mistakes have already been made, but you always want to be pleasantly surprised as opposed to like rudely awoken by a franchise that isn't really giving you what you thought. And I know that, in my experience, I've definitely been rudely awoken a few times. And so I'm just kind of sensitive to that experience, and I don't want buyers to have to deal with that. And you don't have to. There are plenty of really, really wonderful brands out there. It's just figuring out how do you start with one of those good systems that's good and right for you. So Eric, what are some of the things that a buyer should research before they make the decision to invest in a franchise?
Sure. A little bit of follow-up on Amanda's point. There's thousands and thousands of franchisors. I've heard that there are over 10,000 franchisors, franchise systems out there. And where I see a broker, and I know brokers like to be called brokers, but I really see them as a coach in this process. You got to weed out a lot of stuff that you shouldn't be looking at. A waste of time, a waste of money, and quite frankly, the longer that you wait, it's a scary process investing in a business. I know I've invested in a bunch of them, and it's always helpful to have somebody to help you weed out the bad franchises, for lack of a better term. So let's talk about the actual process. So you're going to get, as you explore these franchises, you're going to see a system, you're going to see a business, and you're going to say, boy, that's really cool. I really like it. I really like the people. They sure are nice. And then they're going to give you a 300-page document. And all of a sudden, Amanda is going to look like a bad guy, and the franchisor is going to look like a bad guy. It's like, now it got so confusing. And in addition to that, you're going to notice that the FDD, the documents, are very one-sided. And people, again, get upset because of the misinformation out there about the one-sidedness of franchising. I like to use McDonald's as an example. One of the great benefits of franchising is the brand value that you can generate from owning a franchised business. So if you owned a McDonald's franchise and you made $250,000 a year net income, and I owned Eric's Big Burgers across the street, not franchised, clearly a name that I came up with, and I made $250,000 net income every year, and you sold your McDonald's, you're going to get about 8 times net income as a valuation for your McDonald's. I'll be lucky to get 2 for Eric's Big Burgers. And why is that? The reason is because a good franchised brand, the consumers buy the brand. They don't buy you. So when you go into a McDonald's, when you're driving down the road on vacation or you've got the kiddos, you're going to pull in, you know what everybody wants, you know what it's going to taste like, what it's going to smell like, how much it's going to cost. You know what little Billy wants and what little Susie wants. The only one who's ever confused at McDonald's is my wife. She's always asking me what's good here. It's like, what's good here? You know, we've been here like 1,000,000 times with 4 kids. But this brand value is one of the tremendous benefits of franchising, and it's only achieved if everybody is following the system. You're going to hear a lot of talk about the system during our conversation today. That's everything. Don't buy a franchise if you don't want to follow the system. Don't buy a McDonald's if you want to sell hot dogs because they don't sell hot dogs. But again, that's one of the beauties. That's what creates brand value. That's what creates the system. That's why you're buying this. You don't want to recreate the wheel, as they say. And that's what makes a franchise business so much more valuable in a very real way. I've sold many, many franchised units, and I see the multiples of EBITDA, basically net income, that franchise units get over non-franchise units, one of the benefits. So as we take a look at the FDD, as we take a look at the business concept, the first thing we have to do is make sure we're in the right industry. And that has nothing to do with the franchisor and nothing to do with the FDD. That's really another thing that Amanda and our other business coaches, brokers can help you with. Identify what industry you should be in. Remember that America's getting older, for example. By 2035, the year that Social Security is supposed to be completely devoid of money, 1/3 of our citizenry will be over the age of 65. So that may lead us on a path to service seniors. There are tons of franchises. There are tons of very niche players within various industries. Make sure you're in the right industry. Once you've done that, then you're going to get these documents, this FDD, and you're going to say, Eric told me I got to answer 3 questions. How much will this cost me? Because I know how much I've got to invest. How much am I going to make? That's how we determine if it was a good investment. And what sort of system is in place? So I know I can just plug and play. I can follow the leader and I will get the results that I want. And so when you look at the FDD, even though there are many, many items, they call the sections items in an FDD, and even though there are 300 pages in this document, very few items are helpful in answering these 3 questions. Item 7, you will see in an FDD that item 7 gives you a range of investment. The problem is that franchisors make that range awfully big. And they make that range awfully big because, of course, cities and states vary. Different cost of real estate, different cost of labor, all sorts of things. If I'm building a franchise in Manhattan, Manhattan as in New York, it's going to cost me more in all likelihood than if I'm building the same unit in Manhattan, Kansas. So what franchisors, they try to cover all bases by giving you a range. But item 7 is going to help us answer the question, how much is it going to cost me? Item 19, one of the benefits that Sabrina and Amanda have not mentioned is that the FBA is very big on selling franchises that give an item 19. Now to you guys, an item 19 may not mean anything, but it's where the franchisor can give representations as to how much money you're going to make. That's all contained in item 19. But again, it only tells a portion of the story. And the reason why it only tells a portion of the story is some franchisors give gross sales. I've seen some give EBITDA, net income. It varies. They're not required to present item 19 in a specific way, but if it has to do with how much money am I going to make, even if it starts answering that question, question number 2, it has to be an item 19. So 300 pages, item 7, item 19. Now, if you're following along, you're going to say, well, Eric, you're not all that helpful. You tell me to look at item 7, but you tell me it only kind of answers the question, how much money do I have to invest? And you tell me to look at item 19, but it only kind of answers the question of how much money am I going to make. The one great thing that the government did is it requires the franchisors to list the franchisees that have gone before you. Now, this is where the real action happens. There is a reason why these franchisees are listed in there by name, by address, by telephone number, because you're supposed to call them. You're supposed to call them and spend quality time with them, asking the questions that would be totally inappropriate if you were just meeting a stranger at Target or Walmart or what have you. How much money do you make? How much money did you invest? How much money did you have to put in the business before it reached sustainability? A lot of people talk about break even. I talk about sustainability. That's the point when you stop paying your company, meaning covering its expenses, and it starts paying you. You start making money as an owner. How is the franchisor like to work with? What is their system of training? Do you follow their marketing advice? Is it a plug-and-play system? The brilliance of the FDD, as long as it is, 300 pages long, and you can really get the information you need, in my opinion, by industry research. That comes first, no matter what you're investing in. Industry research, also something that the broker will help you with. Item 7, how much money do I have to put in? Item 19, how much money am I going to get out? But most importantly, the due diligence phone calls that you'll make with franchisees. Now, Sabrina and Amanda know I like to talk, so I'll give you a shortened version of the due diligence and what you're looking for, okay? You have to understand, how much money is it going to cost me? You are not looking necessarily for an absolute consistent answer. Sabrina's building in Manhattan, Kansas. Amanda's building in Manhattan, as in the Manhattan. Their costs are going to vary. You have to anticipate that. So in that case, you're really looking for franchisees which are similarly situated to yourself. You're giving that sample, those answers, more weight than ones who are dissimilar. So if you're building in Manhattan, Kansas, someone in Los Angeles can give you useful information, but with respect to their cost, I would imagine that it's going to be higher. Remember, we don't throw common sense out the window when we're doing this. This is a very common sense approach. Item 19, how much money am I going to make? That also is going to vary. And you may say, well, why should it vary? Well, there's more people in New York than there are Manhattan, Kansas. So I would anticipate that gross revenues would be higher for a New York franchisee than Manhattan, Kansas. Also common sense that people sometimes doesn't think is so common. So again, we're looking for similarly situated franchisees when we're conducting our due diligence. However, the third question, what's the system like? Whether you're in LA or New York City or Manhattan, Kansas, now you're looking for consistent answers. The system is good. I follow the system. You don't want someone in LA to say, well, I don't think the franchisor knows what it's talking about. And the one in Manhattan, Kansas to say, well, I follow the franchisor all the time. And the one in New York City to be kind of in between. Understand, in all groups of people, there is going to be a subset of discontents, of disgruntled people. And if you don't believe me, make a political post on your Facebook account tonight, and you're going to find out some of your closest friends are very disgruntled. However, if we do this right, item 7, item 19, list of franchisees, detailed phone calls, answering questions. Item 7, how much is it going to cost me? Ask similarly situated franchisees. Item 19, how much am I going to make? Ask similarly situated franchisees. Finally, does the franchisor have a system? Can I just follow the system to success? I don't care whether they're in LA, Manhattan, or anywhere in between. You're looking for answers that are consistent to that final question. Once you have these answers, so long, we go back to the beginning, so long as you are willing to follow the system, your results are going to be the same as your due diligence. That's the beauty, in my opinion, of franchising.
Well said.
All right.
Bravo. Amanda, you as a franchise broker, you have a lot of different resources that you mentioned to help fill in additional gaps. Do you mind sharing with us what some of those things are that people might need?
Yeah, of course. So just like not every franchise is created equal, not every franchise broker is created equal. So if you've had a bad experience with another broker, this response is only related to FBA brokers because we are highly trained. We go through weeks and weeks of training, compliance, understanding the laws and the regulations, and we are truly trying to find the best match, right? This is a mutual discovery process. And an FBA broker is going to help you to identify what the right franchise is based on your goals. It's not just about money. So kind of like what I talked about before. I think everybody has gone through this where you have a friend and that friend comes to you, oh, you work in franchising. What's a good franchise right now? Which franchise should I buy? And it's not the buyer's fault, but it's a misconception that people have that they think that just because they see a franchise in every corner, they should own that franchise without understanding what the role of the owner looks like. If you're gonna have to work behind the kitchen every single day, 40 hours a week, not have time with your family, with your friends, but you're gonna make a lot of money, does that make sense to you? And a lot of times it takes you months of research for you to realize that that's what your role is gonna be. Where the franchise broker has access. We have relationships with thousands of brands. That's the number one thing. So our inventory is a lot bigger than most organizations out there. Then we are going to work with you in trying to find what are the things that matter to you. What is it that you're looking for? We all want to make money. I get it. But are you looking for flexibility? Are you looking for maybe quality of life? Do you want to be able to travel more? Do you want to be able to go home and spend more time with your kids, with your wife, right? So that's a question that you need to ask yourself and share that with your broker. Then from there, then we go to work, right? We are going to be reaching out and research lots of brands, but we're also going to be analyzing your market, making sure that your market is viable for that brand, right? So we're going to look at things like your household income, your age demographic, your population density, your, even the level of education. Is it more white collar, blue collar? So we're going to be understanding what those things are and finding good models that match in every component that we talked about. This is the key, because once you have identified not only the industry that you want to be in, but we have the criteria all set up and we're meeting that criteria, then the due diligence starts. Then everything that Eric talked about, we're going to be researching together. And I know that for some of you, if you've never gone through a process like this before, you may be thinking, I don't even know which questions to ask the franchisees, or I don't even know what to ask the franchisor. So we actually have lots of resources to be able to educate you, to be able to prepare you, so you're not blindsided. We're not just going to introduce you to the franchisor and hope that you buy that franchise. That's not what we do. We're very, very involved from the beginning all the way, I would say, until years down the line when you're running that franchise. I still keep in touch with all of my candidates. And that's really the goal, is that once we find the right brand, you are going to be telling other people about why you got into that franchise. We want to hear success stories. So as you're going through the due diligence, people like Sabrina, like Eric, so franchise lawyers, CPAs, funding sources, right? It's one thing that there are so many options out there that most people don't know how to even have access. They think that they're going to go to their local bank and get a loan. It's not how it works, right? So we're going to be putting you in touch with all of those people throughout the process. So it's a combination of analyzing the data that comes directly from the franchise disclosure document. We look at all of that before presenting to you. You focus on the sales and marketing materials at the very end. We leave that for, I would say, the last step. First things is to identify, does it fit the criteria? Number two, does it work with your market? And then finally, we want to make sure that the role of the owner matches with what you can do and what are the things that you want to do in the business. So lots of steps, and I know it can get overwhelming. So this is why I think it's extremely helpful to work with a professional so you can get the guidance on how to execute on those steps.
I think the funding is a really important point, because funding's tricky if you don't do it the right way, in the right order. You can basically be dropped out of your eligibility for another 6 months or so while that misstep is corrected on your credit report. So it's like, you do have to be really, really careful about things like that. And, just to speak a little bit further to what you were saying, Amanda, there are a lot of franchise brokers out there. And I was talking to a franchisor, like a franchise system, the CEO of the system, really recently. And he was telling me, you guys are the only broker group that actually spends time looking at the FDD. And he was not saying it as a compliment, because his franchise doesn't present well as far as their track record and performance. And so he was kind of relaying to me that, all of these other broker groups, they're sending them clients like crazy. And it's a really, really, really niche franchise. It's a very specific type of person, really kind of bizarre, unique franchise. So it's not something that a lot of people would gravitate to automatically, but they have a very good sales process. And so all these brokers are sending candidates to this franchise. And he's, telling me that, we're doing 35 deals a month, but with your brokers, we don't tend to get as much traction because you guys post our information and make it available for them to see. And so what ends up happening is the brokers start calling me and asking me questions about our track record. And, the point of that is that's what we stand for. We want to have educated brokers who are calling and asking questions about their track record. Their legal disclosure says something. It has information in there that could be a red flag for certain types of candidates. And so the fact that our brokers are able to see that, are able to engage in the conversation with the franchisor and make them aware, make them aware that this is something that we see. And then also it prepares the franchisor that, hey, this broker is going to educate their candidate. So the candidate is going to have these questions too. And that experience of the candidate actually knowing the real stuff to ask, it's why we're doing what we're doing. It is the point of this all. It's really, really important to us. And, that's just a dramatic example of how you do have to be careful even with your broker. And you have to understand that just because they have a really strong sales process, that's not necessarily the full story, and you have to keep looking. All right. So Eric, your work as a franchise attorney, when you're going through all of these difficult situations, when people have problems, they tend to come to attorneys to work them out. And so you kind of see both sides of the coin. You see what the franchisor is going through when they're upset. You see what the franchisee is going through when they're upset. If you could just share with us what you think are the key things that people should be aware of, because hindsight's 2020. So if we can give people the hindsight before, maybe we can reverse that trend and have more educated, intelligent people going through this award process. So what would you say are those characteristics of the things that you would really want them to know beforehand?
Yeah, so this is going to sound, some of this is going to sound a bit philosophical, but I'm a bit philosophical on business. And if you take a moment and think about, maybe if you can play or replay this podcast and think about what we've talked about, I think it'll make sense to you. The vast majority of franchisees who have failed for one of three reasons. Number one, they didn't use the right people to help them, or they didn't conduct these steps. They didn't do their due diligence. They bought just because it was hip or cool or had sizzle, but they didn't do the homework. They didn't go through these steps. And guys, these steps are pretty easy, all right? They used a divorce lawyer to help them analyze the FDD instead of a franchise lawyer. So when they finally signed, they signed reluctantly because the divorce lawyer thought the whole thing was nonsense because it was so one-sided and he or she didn't understand it. Don't do that, all right? So that's one of the missteps. The second misstep, and these aren't in an order of priority, the second misstep is a franchisee fails to follow the system. Don't buy a franchise if you're not going to follow the system. That doesn't make you an employee. That doesn't make you subjugated to the franchisor's authority. That makes you a good franchisee. Don't buy McDonald's if you want to sell hot dogs, all right? Open up a hot dog stand. And by the way, believe it or not, there are franchises that sell hot dogs. So find that franchise, all right? And then finally, undercapitalization. I see a lot of franchisees that buy, and then they'll come to me and they'll say, well, I'm investing I'm paying the contractor, but I'm trying to save $500. It's like $500, okay? That's not that much money, all right? The number one reason why small business fails in America is undercapitalization. We're no different in franchising. So when we're figuring out how much is it gonna cost, don't say, ooh, I just have enough. Make sure that you've got enough money budgeted so that you can reach sustainability. One thing that all franchise lawsuits have in common, where the franchisor is getting sued, is the franchisee failed. But if you do these steps that we talk about, you'll have the answers. Then don't use the wrong people, follow the system, and don't be undercapitalized. I would be shocked. In fact, I have very few clients where I help them through. This is not a pitch for me, and we're going to talk about a pitch in a second. I have very few clients that have used me from the beginning who have failed in franchising, not because I'm smarter than anybody else, but because they actually took the time to do the steps, and they actually knew that I got to follow the system once I'm in it. Let's talk about pitch. The role of a broker, the role of the attorney, is a consultative role. It's not a sales role. In fact, I don't like, when somebody says sales, I think of used car sales. I think of timeshare sales. This is your business. You got to be driving. You got to want it. You got to want your legacy. And what the broker and the attorney should be doing is making sure you do it right, helping you do it right. And so, you know, Amanda mentioned, or Sabrina mentioned, and it's true, some franchisors get upset when you ask questions. Like, why would you get upset? You should also be consulting me on the system, on how to be successful within the system. It's really that easy. And if something feels like a sale, then in my opinion, something is being hidden. Something's not being told to you. And let's talk about a value proposition, because that's what it comes down to. I guarantee you, Amanda said, people ask her all the time, well, what is the right franchise? People ask me all the time, well, what's the hot franchise? What should I get into? What will I be successful at? You have to ask yourself 3 questions. These aren't the 3 questions of how much money do I put in, how much money am I going to make, and does the franchisor have the system? These are more personal. These are more philosophical. If people are buying what you're selling, that's an industry question. Remember, you got to do your industry diligence, your industry research. You have to ask that first question. Are people buying what I'm going to sell? Whether it's accounting services or window washing services, senior care, whatever it is, are they buying? And if the answer is yes, then you move to the next question. Are people buying in sufficient quantities in my market, where you're going to do the franchise, Manhattan, Kansas, etc.? That's a question about competition. Is there too much competition in my market? That's a question about demographics. Are there enough people that are in the right age and the right income that are going to buy my services and products in my market area? It's either a yes or no. If it's yes, you get to move to question 3. If it's no, you go back to Amanda and say, hey, I think this is a dud for my market. What else can we look at? All right. Finally, question number 3, is what you're selling better than the competition? Is what you're selling better than the competition? It's either yes or no. Here's the interesting part. You might be wrong. You might be crazy. You might say, yes, absolutely it's better than the competition. Even if it's not, if the first 2 answers were yes, they are buying and they're buying in sufficient quantities. If you can answer the 3rd question, yes, my stuff is better than the next person, you will be successful, whether you're selling Chevrolets or Ferraris. It doesn't matter. That's the value proposition. You have to believe in it. Your broker has to believe in it too. Your lawyer has to believe in it. The franchisor that you talk to have to believe in it. The franchisees that you do due diligence with, they all have to believe in the value proposition. You should never have to sell anything again once you own your business. You should explain to other people, as Sabrina has done, as Amanda is doing, what your value proposition is. And if you believe in it, you can't fool people, all right? The guy who calls you up tonight at 9 o'clock and tries to sell you an extended car warranty, your first car warranty was no good. So the second one can't be any good. He doesn't believe in it. He was just selling tires last week, and he'll be selling car batteries the week after next. But if you believe in the value proposition, you've done all these steps that we've talked about, you will be successful. You can take a note. You can say, Eric guaranteed it, because you cannot not be successful if you take those steps and answer these questions.
There's one other thing that I would say is really important in my experience that helped me be successful. And that was, I've seen people throughout my career as well as the same thing. It's raising your hand. It's calling the franchisor. It's not being afraid to like constantly be in communication with them. Make sure you're answering their calls. Make sure that you're on the phone with them regularly. I'm talking multiple times a week, because that relationship that you're building, they'll give you first right of different contracts that are coming through, and they'll give you extra attention, and you can really get a lot from just raising your hand and saying, hey, I'm here. I want some more help. 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 Come on, give me some more help.
That's a great point. So the third question, I gave you 6 questions now. You're going to say too many questions. But the third question of the first set, do they have a system? That's part of your due diligence. Mm-hmm. What is the support system like? Right. And the support system is not just the franchisor. It's the other franchisees. They are not your competition. In a healthy system, other franchisees want you to succeed. Think about McDonald's. Do you think if you owned McDonald's when there were 10 of them, it was worth more than when there were 36,000 of them? Of course it's worth more than when there are 36,000. Because of what? Because of the brand value that we talked about. And so a healthy system has not only a franchisor that wants to support you and will support you, part of your due diligence question on do they have a system that I can plug and play, but you also ought to ask, do the franchisees support each other? And in a healthy system, they do.
Mm-hmm. I would totally agree with that. Franchisees can provide almost more value than the franchisors in a lot of cases, because they're doing it right alongside of you, and they just have a lot of help and support that's available. Like they're living it with you, so it becomes this brother and sisterhood where you're helping each other. You can share resources, share assets. I mean, that's always really good. And then one other thing that you said a minute ago, you were talking about how in the market, you want to see, are people buying it? And that's definitely something that, one of the resources that Amanda has access to and our brokers have access to is a demographics report. Like we invest in a software that reports that, so we can actually see what people are spending in that market on that service. Sure. So if you have a high spend rate in that market, you can tell that a lot of people are investing in that service in that area. It's above the average pretty significantly. So I definitely want to put my franchise there because I've got a lot of customers that are wanting that service. So, so Amanda, I know we talked about different things that could be challenges with the franchises, and we talked about, kind of blemishes, some of the things that they could not be doing right. And so I'd just like to ask you, like, what happens when you find a franchise that doesn't have a perfect, pristine record? Do we throw them out, or like, what do you do with them?
Absolutely not. So the first thing that I would say is that there is no such thing as a perfect franchise. And this is why it's so important for a candidate to know the pros and the cons of a system. So, but what ends up happening is that they are not aware of what the pros and the cons are, and they go through an entire process and they get to the very end and find out that that's not a good match. So as an example, if a franchise system has terminated a bunch of franchisees in the past 3 years, you can't just say, oh, forget this, I don't want to go with that franchise, right? We look at benchmarks that, so there's a certain percentage that we look for when we're looking at retention rate, but everybody's different and everybody has a different reasoning. So kind of going back to everybody's point on, we have to ask the franchisor, you have to question them, you really have to make sure that you're understanding why that brand, why that franchisee is not following the system, why they're having so many terminations. It's okay to ask that, but the earlier that you ask, and just knowing what the common answers are going to be. So this is more of an Eric's questions too. You know, if you see a lot of terminations in the system, what are the possible answers? Why? We have the most common, but you're never going to find out if you wait too long or if you don't have any knowledge on what the possible answers should be. So FBA brokers are able to tell you right away what the retention rate looks like, if the brand has had any litigations, if they've had any types of bankruptcies in the past. So all of those metrics, we disclose that right off the bat, so you know what it is that you're researching. And it's, Eric made a really important point that I needed to just kind of build on that a little bit. We are not selling franchises. That's not what we're doing. We are coaching, guiding. We're not your babysitters. We're not here to chase you around, call you, hey man, you haven't showed up to this call, or are you still interested? This is not a sales process. This is more of, we're guiding you and coaching, and we're giving you all the tools that you need to have in order for you to find the right franchise. So you need to be communicating with us. It's just, I understand that yes, you are buying a franchise, but the role that we play is consultative. We're here to give you all the tools that you need for you to get there. So I appreciate that, Eric. It's one thing that a lot of people just have misconceptions on. They think that we should be calling and reminding and doing all of these things. There's a lot of work involved in this process, and we're making it very simple for you. We are doing tons of research. We are giving everything that you need in order for you to be educated and know which questions to ask. So in order for you to conduct proper due diligence, we find all of that information up front. So yes, there are franchises that we're gonna probably say not a good fit for me, right? One example that I like to give on the market. So I was recently working with a candidate, and he was looking at a very specific market, and he told me, this is my zip code. I wanna stay right by where I live. So as I started doing the research, I found a really good model that matched everything we discussed. But the franchisor told me that it was not a good market. So when I did the demographic study analysis, it showed that that market was too affluent. It's a funny story, because when you look at a market and you think, oh, this is affluent, so you can pretty much put any franchise in here. Well, that's not necessarily true, because that particular franchise works better with older homes and a lower demographic. So that franchisor suggested another territory that I suggested to him, and he actually ended up going with that territory because it made more sense. He was going to get a larger demographic, he was going to have a bigger territory, and it was a product that he really believed in and he saw himself doing. So all of those things are important. And these are all things that an FBA broker can help you with.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, people don't realize that, there's a lot of franchises out there. We use a company called Franchise Grade, and on Franchise Grade, a company like Chick-fil-A is a B, and McDonald's is a B instead of an A. So it's really a different dynamic where every single franchise has its own unique ecosystem, and it has to be explored to figure out if that ecosystem is the right one for that candidate. I know, Amanda, you had a candidate that was saying, I want really bad franchises. He's like, I want the franchises that are kind of in trouble because I'm so good at going in and turning things around. I want to buy up all the locations of other franchisees and be able to get into them with a lower investment, while all these are established businesses that maybe not doing as well. So his method was a big growth model. And because he had the operational experience, that was the right fit for him. So we have to have lots and lots of inventory to be able to match and fit the different types of requests that we get for candidates. And really just know that, a bad franchise for one person is a great franchise for another. And it really does depend on who you are as an owner. We're at the top of the hour. So I just want to kind of thank Eric and Amanda for coming here today, and just close this out by saying that, our mission is to bring clear and truthful guidance to franchise opportunities. And we just believe that a clear and honest picture, when you have that, you'll be able to make the right decision. And that's truly our priority with you. And so if you'd like to learn more about working with a qualified FBA franchise broker, you can reach out to us with the number and information on the screen. And then we'll match you with someone who is actually going to invest in giving you qualified research and information that really does go beyond that glossy sales materials. And just so that we are the only brokers that we are aware of that actually work inside of the FDD. And we just believe that, and having that knowledge is truly important to you. It's a big investment and it matters, and you matter. And so we want to make sure that we're clear and we're giving you the best possible decision that you can have based on the information. And we'd like to invite you all to a speed round coming up on September 22nd. It's happening at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And this one, we're going to be doing 7 franchise concepts in rapid succession. And they're going to be franchise brands who have been growing even through COVID. So those booming brands within the COVID marketplace. So if you'd like information on that, or to talk about franchise ownership at all, please contact us and we'd be happy to assist you. So I want to thank everyone for joining us on this mission to find good franchises. And we just wish you the best and have an absolutely blessed day. Bye, everybody. Thanks, Eric. Bye, Amanda.
Bye. Thank you.